Well, step on up, smugglers, and let's get some dealing done. It's your old pal, King Waspinator here, with episode 4 of Thunderdome tonight. Now, right off the bat, I guess my first story I want to go into is, I guess, my case for why we need back the hashtag draft Jesse movement to get Jesse Ventura to accept the nomination for the Green Party, because I really can't endorse either candidate right now. I know that might be controversial to either side who might be watching this video, but I was okay with Biden back in the Obama days as being, Obama's goofy old uncle. He wouldn't cause any trouble. He wasn't going to be like Dick Cheney and trying to puppet master everything from behind the scenes. And if anything bad had happened to Obama, Biden would have, because they could see the projections weren't really in their favor. What a mighty coincidence all that was. I mean, Buttigieg is the one that really had the election stolen from him, not Sanders. He was the one that had the most forward momentum out of all the candidates in that original little cluster. But unfortunately, things went the way they went. I'm not for Sanders. If Sanders even tried to run as like a third-party Democrat socialist, no thank you. It's a phony revolution, and he's one of the people that I kind of have on my list of the people most responsible for putting us in the situation we all find ourselves in right now. Because he might have meant it in a political sense. We need a political revolution, but using revolutionary rhetoric puts certain things in people's minds, and lo and behold, all these years later, we're here. But if Bernie Sanders was a true revolutionary, how the hell did he manage to get to second place in a major party? That's not what actual revolutionaries do. So I don't know. I've always felt that he was phony, so I can't really feel like I could back him. Trump, I've never really been anti-Trump. I've never liked Trump. For years before he ever ran for president, I remember arguing with people about why it would be a bad idea for Trump to run for president, because he's a slick kind of guy, and not in a good sense. I remember pointing out years ago, he's the sort of person that he could get away with all sorts of hinky stuff, but he'll do it within just the letter of the law, so he gets away with it. But it's the kind of guy who will abuse the letter of the law to break the spirit of the law, kind of a thing. And there's a lot of things that Trump had done that I was actually quite positive of right off the bat. The whole TPP thing, which is largely seen to have been forgotten in the thunderstorm of controversy that has happened in the last couple of years since he got into office. But right off the bat, he did that, and people really underestimate the kind of like damage the TPP would have done. It had provisions in it that would allow companies to kind of override the rules of the countries they're operating in. And if you're for environmental regulations or keeping minimum wage around, or any other number of little things that they could say, like, well, we can't deal with that from this country because it's going to hurt our profit losses. So they're going to sue the country until they get rid of whatever this is that's bothering them. Like, that would have been a terrible thing to put ourselves into. So I was very happy over the TPP thing. I also can't say that I'm against the idea that the 70-year-old conflict in North Korea is, if not over, at least in the opening stages of being over, which is far more progress than anyone had made. And for the most part, he just seemed to be doing typical Republican things. And we've lived through Republican administrations before. Both sides, the parties themselves, have a need to demonize the other party to their side in order to be able to keep a stable voting base. What the parties really are corporations that sell access to politicians in exchange for donations. That's what they're there for. And we don't actually need them. They were never in any of the original charters that this country's founded on. I don't believe there was anything in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights or anything that I'm aware of, and I'm not an expert on these things. But from what I remember of what I learned in high school and junior high and even elementary school, I don't ever remember that being brought up, that the parties were built into our system. In fact, I vaguely remember some stuff about George Washington being against the whole idea of them. And this is probably why. And then there is just like this weird topsy-turvy, bizarro world that we find ourselves in now, that it's a Republican president that's bringing in the tyranny of having, to crack down on citizens with National Guard troops and putting our army and other soldiers and that kind of situation where they have to make those sorts of decisions, where they either have to, break down the whole chain of command by defying orders, or they find themselves in situations where they're shooting their own citizens. They're not supposed to be policing us. I don't entirely disagree with the concept of disbanding the police, but I think there's got to be some sort of compromise. I'm pretty sure that just up and getting rid of them entirely and just replacing them with something random is not going to lead to anything well. Getting rid of the old police and then just having magic new police is still just going to have police. So I'm not sure if that's going to fix anything. My simple, quote unquote, simple and not really simple solution would be fire all the police chiefs. Hire a bunch of police chiefs from overseas countries, or not overseas if we go to countries like Canada, but hire them from countries that have very different policing methods. Because, no matter how conservative you might be watching this, you have to admit America's police are particularly paramilitary in stance and training and tactics. And, that's not good for anybody. I might not be black, but I'm a pretty tall dude. And anytime I have had any kind of interactions with the police, one of them always seems to have their hand either near the hilt of their gun for some fucking reason, even though I'm not doing anything untoward or making threatening motions or anything like that. So, from that, I can extrapolate what it might be like for other people. But just evaporating the whole thing isn't going to work. So yeah, like I say, hire some police chiefs from countries that don't operate their police this way, and then pass legislation to break up police unions. That's probably the most controversial thing about what my proposal is. But by doing that, you can then give the new police chiefs firing authority so that they can get rid of any officers that are not complying with whatever new directives and new training protocols they come up with and want to implement after they get into the department and have a chance to look at it. And I'm not saying bring in an entire European or Asian police force. I'm saying just hire police chiefs and give them the ability to fire people. And that's probably going to have to involve either getting rid of or massively altering how the police unions work in this country. But getting rid of them entirely, that's going to leave a void that every time in the past that void's there, it gets filled in by the mafia and stuff like that. And I'm not sure if that's really a positive trade-off in the long term. But there has to be a way to at the same time be able to get our police restructured in such a way that it's more humane. So anyway, because of all that, I can't find that I really want to vote for or endorse either candidate. So I've been Green Party since 2000. I didn't vote for Jill Stein either of the times she ran because I do not need a president who's going to read our fucking horoscopes and shit in State of the Unions. The Green Party, unfortunately, because so few people give it attention, it attracts kooky people. If more people supported the Green Party, it would become a more serious party. And people from both sides of the aisle have reason to want to get in on it at the early stages. If people on the right wing would vote for the Green Party, that would greatly moderate the Green Party's policies so that you don't feel like it's pushing some super extreme green agenda. But if you completely just leave it alone, then of course it's not going to want to cater to you at all. I find the Green Party is a little bit more viable than the Libertarian Party. The Libertarian Party has maybe a little bit more of a negative aroma around it, so to say. I'm not the one who made it that way, so don't blame me for saying it. I'm just observing what I observe. And there's been talk, he himself has said stuff about it, but the idea of that Jesse Ventura might run for president as the Green Party. And I could live with that. I'd be totally down for that. From what I remember, I'm not a Minnesotan, but back when he was governor of Minnesota, I don't remember Minnesota burning the fuck down to the ground or having huge national controversies over fucking having their police stormtrooper style, squash people to death in the street. So, he might not be a bad choice. Only one way to find out. I don't know. Maybe look into donating some money toward cause if that's your thing. We can't let the Democrats keep being rewarded for what they are. And the Republicans are just kind of dumb. That's something my grandpa said a long time ago that always stuck with me. And he was a colonel in the Air Force who was in Saigon, like right at the very end. You know that footage you see of the people being evacuated out of the embassy in Saigon from the helicopters? My grandpa was one of those dudes getting on those helicopters. So, yeah. Anyway, he had said from his experience of being in Washington, D.C., that, Democrats are evil and Republicans are dumb. And from all I've observed over the course of my life, I see that as true. Yes, to people on the left, that might sound confusing because the Democrats say a bunch of really good things that sound great. How could they be evil? Well, what do you think evil people are going to say to you? Are they going to openly twirl their mustache and talk about blowing shit up, and killing your girlfriend and, kidnapping the princess and stealing the Hope Diamond? Are they going to say that? Hell no. No, they're going to mask all their activities under a bunch of rainbows and unicorns. Literally lately. I still am a left person, but I can't have anything to do with the left. And I'm very sympathetic to the right. The right has reformed a lot from what I've observed, actually. They're not at all these hardcore Bible-thumping dumbasses they were back during the Bush administration. They've come a long way. Are they perfect? No. But they're, I think, closer to what Abraham Lincoln wanted the party to be now than they have been probably for the last 50 to 60 years. And you have Trump to thank for that. But I still occasionally hear things from them that kind of like make me twinge a little bit, like especially when Andrew Yang had brought up the whole debate about UBI and universal basic income. And there's always this reflexive thing that I hear from some people where they're like, well, we can't be letting deadbeats have their money. And I'm like, look, if there are people out there that are that lazy and lackluster in life and have so little ambition that they'd be willing to live on the barest subsistence minimum so they can live in a hole in the wall and eat ramen and play video games all the time, then I say they're probably not a really good person to have in the workforce in the first place. And like, it's not healthy for anyone for them to be homeless. So why not give them the barest minimum and let them live in a hole in the wall and play video games and stay the fuck out of everyone else's hair? What business is of ours? It's little things like that like make me a little still hesitant to get on board with the Republican thing right now. And right now also just, all the years of being told that you need the guns so that you can fight off the government when it comes to fucking stomp down on you. And then when we are actually in that situation and there is the beginnings of a fucking open revolt in this country, and there is government troops coming in to crack down on people, they don't seem to really need guns to fight them off. They've gotten whole police departments to flee in a couple instances with what? Fireworks and some rocks? Like, the whole gun thing has been bullshit this whole fucking time, apparently. It's not what you needed. What you needed was numbers. A sufficient number of people will overwhelm any amount of guns because you can't shoot everyone. And if everyone's just kind of suicidal and has nothing to fucking live for because you've wrecked their goddamn lives with a fucking overblown pandemic bullshit, stomp out most of everyone's fucking livelihood, and even the people who are still working have giant question marks in their minds as to how long any of this is going to last. And all because our country, our economy would be fine if we didn't have this constant growth cycle that we were chasing every 4 months. If companies were just allowed to make enough money to pay their bills and get by, they'd be fine. But no, they have to constantly get better and better every 4 months on their stock reports. Otherwise, they go up in flames. That's what's eating our economy alive. It's the fucking stock market. That's why it's getting fatter and fatter. That's why it's going up, because it's eating our economy alive. That's the fucking problem. If we can get rid of the stock market and we can get rid of the political parties, we'd be fine. And a good start for all that would be get a president that is not a member of either of the two establishment parties. And that's why I say draft the fuck out of Jesse Ventura. He's not perfect. No human being is perfect. You're never going to find that creature. And you shouldn't want to. Some of the people I say who are here on the left, who some of their biggest complaints about Trump is merely just down to optics. Was that why you liked Obama? Because you're like a propaganda artist and you just liked him because he looked good? What does that say about you? What does it say about the left that for all their vaunted morality and acceptance that they have to use public humiliation as a tactic, and mob rule as a tactic to keep people in line and enforce the morality. If that's how your morality has to be enforced, is it moral at all? As I say, it's not that I'm against the left. I'm against the Democrat Party in particular and how they've swindled the left. Time and time again, they've lied. Barack Obama beat Hillary Clinton in the primary in 2008 because of the backing of the anti-war movement. And it was under Barack Obama that the anti-war movement disappeared into the fucking ether. There's a reason why that shit happened. And I can't accept Biden. I'm not even for the Joe Rogan bullshit of like, his health is bad. Like, yeah, that's probably true. He might very well be the first president who dies in office of old age if we elect his ass. That should have been John McCain's fucking role. If he hadn't been so dumb as to pick Sarah Palin, he probably would have won, maybe. Jesse Ventura. I'd be okay with him. He's a little kooky, but he's not too kooky. And we've already survived 4 years under Trump. We could just deal with a different kind of kooky. And since he is a former wrestler, he's like, that there's that whole rube country bumpkin boobarb kind of bullshit type people out there who like Trump for the same fucking kind of vibe. Well, Jesse Ventura has that. Could probably bring them on board. I think everyone's tired of all this shit. So I think it's a good time to try to push for it. So, whatever, share this video or just, post about Jesse Ventura or do some looking up on the internet. You got your own damn fingers. Anyway, though, I guess after that rant, what else did I want to talk about tonight? I kind of a different level. I had a little John Schnepp story I wanted to share. He pops up a lot. He was a beloved figure to a lot of people, myself included. I'd never met the guy. I'm not going to act like I'm the biggest John Schnepp guy in the world or that my story is any particular significant. But, I don't know. He just still seems to get brought up a lot. So I just kind of felt like sharing this because he did kind of touch my life in his own little indirect way. And there's reasons why I felt very bad when he died. It was on top of a bunch of other things. For about 8 years, I had lived up in Colorado, Aurora, Colorado, to be specific. And I was actually at work at a 7-Eleven at work the very night that around the corner of the Century 16 movie theater got shot up. And things were really weird that night. And for about a month after that, the neighborhood was tense. I had a lot of weird energy directed at me from customers and stuff. And I had a offer because my grandma was, in failing health and they were putting her into hospice care, that instead of her going to a nursing home, she wanted to die at home. And so I had an option where because my mom couldn't take care of her on her own because my mom had her own issues, but they needed a 24-hour responsible adult in the house. And so that ended up being me. But instead of it only taking 3 months, it took about 3 years. And then when grandma finally did pass, everything came crashing and collapsing to an end. And spent like a couple of weeks staying in a motel until all the money had dried up that I had stashed back. And spent 5 days living in a park, lost almost all my stuff except for like what I could keep in a backpack and a suitcase. And at the beginning of the month, after 5 days of sleeping in a park, fucking managed to get back to Austin, Texas, and 5 days later have a job, and things have been relatively fine since then. But during that little 5-day window, the only thing I had to watch of all things was John Schnepp's documentary, What the Death of Superman, What Happened. I had actually bought it from his website after hearing that he had been having problems with people stealing the damn thing. I had just been a casual fan of John Schnepp's. From the Collider days and being on Heroes, which is also, where I discovered Robert Meyer Burnett back originally. And I think that's probably a good chunk of why Robert Meyer Burnett was kind of kept around, maybe. It's because he was John Schnepp's friend. And so having Robert Meyer Burnett around was a way of kind of honoring Schnepp in that way. At least that's my own personal impression. Everyone's going to have their different point of view on that because everyone experiences YouTube a little bit differently. So don't take too much out of that. But, my dad was a musician. I was raised up real strongly with the idea that artists deserve to, get paid for what they get paid. It's not good to steal music. It's not good to steal movies, all that kind of stuff. And, I kind of took like, well, fuck those assholes to steal them. I'll chip in $20 towards John Schnepp and actually get something back. I'm not big on using super chats or all that kind of stuff to support YouTubers or Patreon. But if someone has something physical to actually sell me, like a comic book or a movie on a DVD or something, I'm all down for it. So, I bought that, and it was the one movie I had in my hard drive a couple months later when everything fell apart that I had to watch while I was fucking sitting in the park or hanging out at a damn Dunkin' Donuts for their free Wi-Fi and all that kind of stuff, waiting to get some money so I can get on a Greyhound and get the fuck out of all that. And so, like in its own little way, John Schnepp, without ever knowing me or having any idea, but his movie helped keep me sane in an extremely dark fucking time, high stress fucking time. I still, like, it's been 5 years since all that, and I still don't entirely feel recovered from it. I mean, I still talk weird now. I didn't used to have this odd pausey, stunnery kind of thing that I have now, and I don't really know where that came from. It's an insane amount of stress. But anyway, so that's my chef story. It's not the greatest one in the world. It's not meeting him at Comic-Con or fighting off Satan with him or anything cool. But I guess a story that he would be talking about if he was still with us is the fact that apparently there's talk at Warner Brothers that Man of Steel 2 might actually be coming. And this is because Warner Brothers isn't Warner Brothers anymore. Warner Brothers is now AT&T. And AT&T doesn't give a shit about any of Warner Brothers' decisions of the last several years. They want to try to fix the DCEU is basically kind of the vibe I'm getting over the things I'm hearing. And that's why we're getting stuff like the Snyder Cut. That's why the Ayers Cut, while not realistic, is more realistic than it would have been a couple months ago. And apparently there's also talk that Man of Steel 2 might come. Now, it had already been announced that J.J. Abrams was going to be involved with the Superman movie, which, okay, I'm not addressing this to anyone at Warner Brothers. I want, if on the off chance that the rumors are true and that people at AT&T are actually paying attention to what the audiences want out of this movie, then here's my basic wish list and warnings for what to do with Man of Steel. I'm very trepidatious about J.J. Abrams' involvement. The less hands-on he is with it, the better. I don't know if you've already signed contracts with the guy and you're kind of stuck with it, but I really wish you hadn't done that. Look at every franchise this dude has touched. They're all up in flames. Even if there's people who like them and defend them, there's also a sea of people who do not. And you don't want that. Is that really, it might generate some buzz and controversy, but what you want is your bottom dollar satisfied. You want something that everyone's going to be behind. So be real careful with J.J. Abrams. If you're stuck with him already, watch that motherfucker like a goddamn hawk and come down like the wrath of Thor on his ass if he steps out of line and starts doing something to, like, create a mystery. The fucking mystery box bullshit is a carny trick. It's selling you an empty box. He's straight up telling people that he's selling people an empty box, and then they spend years afterwards arguing about what they think might be in the box. That's what's happened to Star Trek and Star Wars under his fucking command. Do not let that happen. You do not want that. And you're in this already wrecked bullshit, schizophrenic DC cinematic universe that you already have. If you're trying to fix it and you're not just going to wipe the slate clean and start from scratch, be real careful about having J.J. Abrams up in there. Because odds are he's going to screw it up. It's not 100% guarantee. But man, you're playing Russian roulette with that one. And I don't think you really want to risk that. So, like I say, if you've already signed a contract, you shouldn't have done that, but keep an eye on that guy. Go ahead and let Snyder direct it. The problem with Snyder is not that he's a bad director. Recently, I just rewatched 300 a couple weeks ago. Still a great movie. I'm in the camp of people who liked Watchmen. I know there's some real hardcore comic fans and Watchmen fans who prefer the original comic and don't like how it was changed and how some things were presented differently and Snyder's version of Watchmen. But I preferred it myself. Even back when I was into comics, it was too depressing. It wasn't my thing, but I find the movie a lot more approachable. So whatever. It was well directed. But from Man of Steel on, I haven't been a big Snyder fan. It's not that Man of Steel was bad. It's just some of the creative choices. Yeah, they've caused problems in the long term now, haven't they? If you've been paying any attention to how YouTube and the internet in general has reacted to these things. Batman versus Superman would probably have been better if the studio hadn't been so nervous and hadn't been interfering so much and keep adding things into it that didn't need to be in there. Justice League obviously has been a mess, and you're already trying to address it in your own way, and good luck with that. I don't know if it's salvageable or not. But if moving forward, you're going to let Snyder direct Man of Steel 2, do like he had with 300 and Watchmen. Give him a real specific thing from the comics to adapt visually. Don't let him free ball it and mix and match things from different things. Just give him a real specific Superman story arc that you can, like, okay, boom, just make this. Just make this. Don't add anything else to it. Just make this. Because 300 was great. It visually recreated Frank Miller's style and all that kind of stuff. Watchmen was great. Recreated a lot of iconic scenes. Visually stunning. Every time he has source material to work with that includes a specific story to tell, he makes a good movie. But whenever he is just mix and matching stuff from different stuff and coming up with it on his own, that's when Snyder starts having problems. So just make sure he's got a specific thing to make. But other than that, I'm fine with him directing it, and it'd be a good, appropriate close off for him after all this bullshit. So let's see. Anyway, I talked about my Schnepp story. Those are my Man of Steel ideas. Talked about my compromise concept for how to disband the police without actually disbanding the police, but to try to create a more humane police force and draft Jesse. I think that's about everything I wanted to cover on this one. There's nothing in the chat as per usual. So I guess until next time, y'all stay waspinated out there.